Good evening and welcome to Will's Webinars July's edition, and I'm really looking forward to this evening because we have got the one, the only, the incredible Taz Thornton that's joining us this evening. So give us a big woo 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 woo, everybody's at home that's watching this or watching it in the car or wherever it is you watch it from, watching it from work. Really looking forward to this evening. So Taz, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Will. Always a pleasure.
I can't wait to get stuck into this evening. But before we do that, for those of you that are attending it for the first time, attending the webinar for the first time, what we do is we try and make this as interactive as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to post in the chat our Facebook group link. So if you're not already in our Facebook group, join the Facebook group. And what I'd love for you to do is get really engaged on the official thread. So if I can click and hopefully this work for me, you'll see that there's a post. Hopefully you can see this on your screen right now in the Make It Happen community called the official webinar thread, where you can go. I'm going to be monitoring this thread the whole way through the webinar, so you can ask any questions, you can get involved. Let us know if you're joining us right now on that thread. Let us know that you can hear us okay. Let us know where you're tuning in from. It'd be great for us to be able to know a little bit about that. So Mark, yes, I can see that. Hi Linda, how you doing? So yeah, just get stuck in on that thread, and then we can make sure that we keep this really interactive and get you guys involved in this, so we can all pick Taz's brains and learn some great stuff about being able to unleash your awesome this evening. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, so hopefully you guys can see us a little bit better. So Taz, for those that maybe don't know too much about you, I don't know where they've been hiding, but you in yourself, you are an incredible person that has gone through the journey. Oh, hello. It looks like Taz has frozen. Taz, hopefully this is working. Looks very surprised on the screen. You're still there. Okay. I don't know what's happened, but it looked like you've gone there for a second. But I'm saying you're an incredible person because I've been following you on social media, following your journey on social media for, well, years now. And you are someone that walks the talk. You really are on that whole journey. And I've got massive admiration for anybody that does that. And obviously now you are a best-selling author. You've grown a following as an inspirational speaker, and I've frozen now apparently. Hopefully this is the wonders of tech. I was saying to Taz just as we got on that for one of the first times ever, it's just worked perfectly without having any tech issues. So this is slightly annoying. Guys, can you just let me know in the group if you can let me know if you can hear and see me okay, and if you can see and hear Taz okay, because it looks like we're having a few little glitches, because it was working perfectly for about 15 minutes before we got going. Not Taz, lost Taz. You can hear and see me, but can't see Taz. No Taz. Okay. Hopefully, what we've done, I'm going to turn Taz's mic on. Turn Taz's camera on. Let's see if we can get Taz back. I hope we can. What we might have to do is tell a few jokes. There we go. We're back.
I'm back.
We're back in the game. All right. So I was just saying, I don't know what you heard and what you didn't hear, but I was saying that Taz, I've got massive admiration for you. I've been following you on social media for a few years now, and one of the things that I love is that you're so authentic, and that's a bit of a buzzword, but you share the highs, the lows, and everything in between. And you're someone that's constantly putting yourself out there and standing for what it is that you believe in. And I absolutely love that. And I know you get phenomenal results with people. You've built up quite the following. Obviously,
dude, this is not perfect.
Is it? Am I frozen on your side, or? Are we working, Taz? Are you there? Hello? Let's see if we can get this this working. What we might resort to. Right, okay. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to switch my camera. I do apologise about this, guys. This is... So Paul can see me fine. Let's try this. Hopefully. Taz, am I okay now?
Yep, I can see you now. And I can hear you.
Let's just cross our fingers and hope that now it's going to be sorted. I'll try and say what I was saying for the 10th time. So you're incredibly authentic. Been loving what you've been doing on social media and the way you put yourself out there and the great work you've been doing with people. Now you've built up a following. You've been regarded as sort of the number one or a number one inspirational speaker. You have been you're an award-winning coach, best female coach that I understand you won last year, and a best-selling author. So you've sort of you've walked the talk, but now you obviously want to go out and share it with people. So, but people that aren't maybe familiar with who you are and have come onto this webinar this evening because they thought, you know what, I want to know how to turn negatives into positives. I want to learn to be more of a real me. I want to learn to build my self-confidence. What's got you to the point of where you are now? What's a little bit about your backstory that I think people would be intrigued to learn?
Okay, well, a bit about my backstory. I was right at the top of the corporate tree in publishing, and everything on paper seemed fine, but I wasn't happy. And if we trace that story back even further, if we go right back to my early 20s, at the time I felt stuck in a horribly abusive relationship. And it was the kind of abuse that at the time nobody was speaking about. Now we talk about emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, gaslighting we talk about. But back then, abuse was a big fella punching a woman. That's all it was. And my abuse didn't fit the required norms in terms of me being able to know what to do with it. So I didn't say anything. I kept quiet, had no benchmarks. And back then, I thought my only way out was to get out of life. So I thought about checking out, and then I'm an only child, and my mum would be in bits. My dad would be. I didn't want to leave that kind of mess for my loved ones. And then I tried praying for a terminal illness, and I've done a hell of a lot of work to undo the kind of energetic impact of that since. And then when none of that worked, I hit my master plan. And my master plan was to take as many risks as I could every day in an attempt to not be back on that doorstep that evening. And ultimately that culminated in me being in a car accident. And I was driving to work one morning, driving like a lunatic, convincing myself that I needed to get to the newsroom early and write this front page lead. And I overtook on the brow of a hill, and a car came towards me, and I honestly thought, that's it, I'm getting out. There was a moment of sheer bliss when I thought it was escaping, but then common sense and reality kicked in fairly quickly, and I recognized that it didn't matter how big my death wish was. I couldn't take anybody else with me. I couldn't hurt anybody else in the process. So I slammed the anchors on, but Brakes back then, I was driving a B-Reg Ford Escort. The brakes then are not like brakes today. And I ended up at the bottom of a very deep ditch in being caught by a tree stump. I insisted on going into work. I went into work. My editor, Dave, because all the best old school editors are called Dave, aren't they? Dave said he was going to take me to the pub for a sharp drink to help me get over the nerves. So at lunchtime, we walked about a mile to the pub and he bought me a double brandy, and then we walked back again. And it got to about 3 o'clock and I thought, ooh, that's a bit sore. And, you know, that's the amazing thing about adrenaline, isn't it? Adrenaline is one of the best natural coping mechanisms our body has for when we're going through trauma. And they put me through x-rays at A&E fairly quickly when I ended up there. And then there was a flurry of activity and they put me on a flatbed and packed my head in sandbags. And I lay there for 9 hours without anyone telling me what was going on. 9 hours. I tell you, 9 hours of staring at polystyrene ceiling tiles, you can create the Sistine Chapel in your mind. And it was after 9 hours, I noticed my mum talking to the guys in white coats, looking very, very upset. And that's when they mentioned the words spinal and damage in the same sentence. And it turns out I'd broken my back in 3 places and I'd been walking around on it. And somehow in that moment, I went from hopeless to hopeful. And again, whoever I'd been talking to before saying, please let me die, I was now saying, please let me walk. I'll be even more trapped. I've written my car off. Don't let me not be able to walk. There's no way out then. And miraculously, the places where I damaged my back, it sounded a lot worse than it was. I'd actually crushed 3 of the vertebrae. And because of the positioning, I didn't need to be in traction. I needed a neck brace and I had a stick and a sling for a while. But that's where everything started to flip, or at least I thought that's where everything started to flip. I got out of that relationship. I had to go into hiding for a while. The police were involved. It was very nasty. And I started to rebuild, but then promptly forgot all those promises I'd made. When I'd been saying, make sure I can walk, just give me something. I said, look, there's going to be lots of other people in the same position I'm in who are in this horrible grey area and don't know what to do. I'll use what I've been through, or I'll help other people. But then I promptly forgot all of that, went back into goal setting, which is how in my late 20s, early 30s, I ended up as UK director of what at the time was one of the world's biggest multinational publishing companies. So I really did walk the corporate talk. I was right at the top of the tree in terms of, you know, business to business publishing, which is where I'd ended up. But I still wasn't happy. I was hiding behind the pinstripes, hiding behind this fake grin. You know, I'd look like I'd been sleeping with a coat hanger in my mouth, anything to try and convince the world that everything was fine. But inside I wasn't fine. I was rattling with antidepressants. I was crying every night. I was propping myself up far too much on whiskey, not to the point of alcoholism or anything, but to the point of, yeah, don't waste good single malts on me, just get me some bells. And it took a load of shit hitting my personal fan effectively in 2006. In a period of about 8 weeks, my uncle died, my dad died unexpectedly. Some debts we hadn't been aware of came to light, which meant that the financial safety net I thought I was going to get was gone. I did a bit of escapism then again. I went away for business a couple of nights after my dad had died, and the one night I went away was the night my parents' home was broken into, at least all the outbuildings. So hello, big old dose of guilt. Then my partner was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Loads of stuff was happening, loads of awful stuff, all in the period of 8 weeks. The amount of stuff that hit my personal fan in those 8 weeks is the stuff that most people have over a lifetime. And at the end of that, when I found myself kind of rocking and crying and trying to hide under my mum's dining room table, I recognised something really did have to give, and it couldn't keep being me, because of course all the stuff I hadn't dealt with from before came back and bit me on the backside in a really painful way. And it's only when I look back now, it wasn't until after the event that I could look back and say it was a breakdown. I now say it is a breakthrough. But I worked for 4 years through that without any of my work colleagues really understanding the extent of it. My mask was so firmly in place. But it was through that period that I recognised the one thing that really filled me up, that made me feel alive again, was helping other people. So I went through this phase where I'd go and speak to the other managers and find people in other departments who are about to be booted and say, can I just try? Can I see if I can turn them around? And every time I managed to turn somebody from failing employee into thriving employee. So I was already quite interested in alternative ways of personal development. I've been working with shamans and medicine people for a number of years, learning lots of really old personal development skills that weren't just about this, but also about the heart and the gut, about everything. And then I also trained in NLP, and I did some coaching, mentoring, a bit of hypnosis. I trained with the same guys who trained Tony Robbins to teach people to walk over fire and broken glass and break arrows with their throat and crazy stuff like that. And by the time I escaped in 2010, I'd got this really solid set of skills that enabled me to help people in a very real way, as well as my own experiences. And that's how I got into this crazy world. But what really launched me into the public eye, if you like, was, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I guess it was now. I did this video. I mean, lots of you watching this will be able to relate to this, I'm sure. Somebody on Facebook was wrong. So I just had to do something. And I started to type this response. But then I thought, this is going to take ages. So I did a video, and it was before the days of live streaming. We'll remember the days before live streaming. It's so second nature now, isn't it?
Time, yeah.
Yeah, once upon a time, before there was live streaming. Let's not
you colour TVs.
Yeah, and phone boxes, and having to take a phone card on holiday with you. Crazy. So I did this video, and I broke every rule in the book. I rambled. I went on for about 10 minutes. I didn't have a clear narrative. I didn't have any of my branded gear on. And I talked in that video about stuff I hadn't talked about publicly before. I talked about the abuse. I talked about trying to check out. I talked about essentially being really crap at suicide and how pleased I was that I'd been crap at suicide. And I talked about how I was now starting to use some of my own experiences to help and empower and inspire others. And I told people that even when they felt hopeless, even when they felt that all hope was gone, just keep the faith and hang in there, because there's always something more. And if I'd been successful when I'd tried to be on more than one occasion, I would have missed out on so much. And I hit send, and then within minutes, my phone started to light up. It was like I'd got a carousel in my hand. Ping, 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 ping. What's going on? What's going on? So I checked Facebook, and I'd forgotten to hit friends only. I'd been so convinced that I was just saying this to my pals. I just hadn't checked my privacy settings, and it was going viral. And by the end of that night, it had topped something like 40,000 views. And then I started getting messages from people saying, wow, I've just watched your video. I wanted to die and now I don't. And somebody else messaged and said, I've just shown this to my niece who's been suicidal for years, and she's decided that she wants to live on the strength of watching that video. And then came the calls from BBC and Huffington Post and Kindred Spirit and Diva. And wow, everything went a bit crazy. So although I feel like I've been doing this work forever and a day, it was really that video. It was a mistake that enabled me to help far more people. So I don't believe in mistakes. I don't believe in, failure. We're not failing. We're learning to succeed. And that what I would have seen as a mistake at the time, because, oh my God, I only wanted my friends to see that, had the knock-on effect of saving goodness knows how many lives. And I still get messages today about that. So that's really where it all started.
And I've watched the video, and it brought a tear to my eye, and for reasons that I messaged you about at the time. And it is a great video. Mark's asked, is it on YouTube? I don't think it's on YouTube, but it's still on Facebook, right? So we can get the link and share it in.
It is on YouTube. There won't be many views on YouTube because I only put it on, oh God, a few months back. Somebody said, can you give me a YouTube link? So I uploaded it. So it is on YouTube now as well.
Okay. Well, what I'll do after this is I'll find the link on your video, and then we'll put it in. So yeah, we'll do that for you guys so you can watch it. But it's an incredibly powerful video, and I think one of the key messages that I take from this is that there may be someone that's watching this right now that is going for a really tough time, and I think we both agree that life happens for you, not to you.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
And being able to understand, and sometimes it's hard, because we're asking the wrong questions. why is this happening to me? Like, this isn't what I want to be happening. But
what have I done to deserve this?
Exactly, and there is a bigger picture, and it can be so difficult to see in the time. And I myself, it's no secret, I'm talking about it more and more. I've been very ego driven, and like, this is what I want to do. I want to make it happen. I'm going to do all these things for years and years and years. And I've still got a company called Make It Happen. I'm a big advocate for making it happen, but it comes from a slightly different angle now to where it used to. And sort of going through this sort of spiritual awakening, if you like, over the last few years, as I'm becoming more and more aware. And I'm very science based. And I said to you earlier, I love I can't remember exactly the term I used, but I said, like, you're a real spiritualist. And what I mean by real spiritualist is you are very spiritual. I know that, and I'm very aware of that. But you come at it from a place that people can get it, sometimes people that are really spiritual, it's sort of so woo-woo, they're just like out away with the fairies, but you really come at it from a very logical way, really, and seeing that from obviously from an experience perspective, and becoming aware, and becoming more aware of yourself and all of the tools, lessons and things that you've learned that you're now able to apply with others. Absolutely.
I think it has to be for me, it has to be very, very grounded. I'm an ex-journalist. I'm a cynical bugger. So, if a curtain's wafting on its own, it's more likely to be a draft than a ghost. I do believe in all things spiritual. I work a lot with energy, whatever you want to call that. But if you hear hoofbeats, it's probably not zebras. And I don't have to pull an angel card before I get up out of bed in the mornings. I do meditate. I do practice mindfulness. I do still practice shamanism. I teach other people about those spiritual practices. There's a 14-month spiritual empowerment program I run, but that also blends in things like neuro-linguistic programming and confidence work and self-belief, and it brings in things like firewalking. So it's absolutely grounded in stepping into your own power. I guess for me, you can sum it up with recognizing the difference between being powerful and power-full. So the Danes talk about Macht and Kraft, power to or power over. So I think where we get it wrong, and we've both been on that ego trip journey, in our corporate days. Well, we've chatted about that, but that's about being powerful. The big mighty fat cat who has dominion over all the tiny little people. Whereas being powerful is recognizing who you are, is getting back to the truth of who you were meant to be before society started to condition you into being who it thinks you should be. And it's about finding that very pure channel to step into the essence of your truth, into your own power, to be powerful, filled with your own power and with universal power, rather than trying to have power over anybody else. And that's where I come from. I think we trip ourselves up an awful lot. There's a lot of people who keep themselves small because they are afraid of being accused of being in ego or being arrogant. And I think our society does people a massive disservice with phrases like pride comes before a fall. No, it doesn't. There's nothing wrong with having confidence in your ability. There's nothing wrong with having pride in your achievements. You can absolutely be confident without being arrogant, and you can absolutely be proud without being in ego.
How do you define that?
How do what, sorry?
How do you define the difference between confidence and ego and arrogance?
When I'm standing up and speaking in front of people, I've done 4 back-to-back gigs today, and when I stand up and speak, I am absolutely confident. I don't pre-rehearse anything, and this is where my hippie shit stuff comes in, and I'll tell you why I use that hashtag in a minute. I absolutely trust that the knowledge I have will somehow come through me and reach the people in the audience it needs to reach. And that's not about me saying I'm better than you, I know everything. It's about opening my heart, opening my mind, opening myself up to the energy and the vibe in that room, and trusting that the right words will come to touch the right people in the right way. And that for me is the difference. I'm not strutting out onto that stage going, yeah, I'm going to make you cry and you cry and you cry, and I know more than all of you tiny little plebs. That's the difference for me. It's a purity. It's an attitude. It's not about wanting to be better than. It's not about wanting to be on a pedestal. God, I constantly climb down if somebody tries to put me on a pedestal. It's just about trusting and being and keeping it pure and clean. It's about keeping the energy clean and bright. Leave every area more beautiful than you find it.
I absolutely love that. And yeah, I mean, I think it was I think it might. So I know Mark Stowe's on this at the moment, and we both did our NLP training with Stephen Doran. I'm sure Stephen Doran, once when we asked the question between confidence and arrogance, he said confidence is when you think you're the best. Arrogance is when you think you're better than others. And I always thought that was a really good way of describing it. And
being the best that you can be in that moment. Doesn't matter what anybody else is doing.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned about is happening through you. So there's a great video which I'm going to share the link to now before I forget, by Michael Bernard Beckwith. I don't know if you've seen it, called the 4 Stages of a Spiritual Awakening, which is hold on, because it's going to play. So let me.
You're actually playing it.
Yeah, it's playing. There we go. Hopefully it's going to stop. It will stop at some point when the button. What's going on here? But I'll post it in the Facebook group for you guys. But the 4 Stages of Spiritual Awakening talks about that life happens to you, by you, through you, and as you. And it's only about 5 minutes long. But the first time I saw this, I come across this video. I watched it, I reckon, 10 times back to back, just constantly over and over and over, because I was just trying to. It made so much sense in a short period of time. So yeah, I've posted that. So that's really powerful. So whilst we're on the topic of spirituality, we're going to get onto our intended topics, but hopefully you guys are finding this useful and beneficial. I know we've not actually got onto the agenda yet, but I love these conversations. They kind of go off anywhere.
That's an agenda, my God.
Well, the 3 things that we said we'll talk about. For people that maybe aren't that spiritual, what would you say is one practice or way of thinking that they could start to consider that they would find particularly useful if they're looking at improving their spiritual? I'm gonna say spiritual anything, whether that's awareness, whatever you want to label it as. What would you say?
Okay, for me, the first step to getting more in touch with anything that we might deem spiritual with a small s and under a very large umbrella is the sense of spirituality that comes from within. We've got to learn to quieten that monkey mind and be receptive to the outside world. So if everything's made of energy, we should be able to at least learn from, connect with, feel that energy in some way. So the easiest way to start is meditation. But when I say meditation, I think I'm starting to be known as something of a maverick when it comes to meditation. I'm the Jack Black of meditation, really, because I do not get people to sit cross-legged and start chanting on Mane Padme Hum, which is beautiful, but it's not what it's about. I think so many people give up on meditation because they have this misconceived idea that they need to get to nothing. And I was told, well, I got to nothingness once, and then I went, oh, I've done it. Shit. The second you think you've got there, you've blown it. So meditation isn't about getting to that state of absolute nothingness. It's focusing on one thing. If you've ever been in love and all you can think about is that person, you could say that's meditation. If you've ever been so pissed off by someone that all you can think about is that person, you might say that's meditation. So to start practicing meditation, just focus on one thing. The easiest way is to focus on your breath. And it's just, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. And every time your thoughts start to wander, and they will, because that's what thoughts do, until we start to train our brain to just slow down a little bit, of course thoughts are going to pop in. But the important thing is not to grab that thought, just observe it and let it go. So start to practice meditation just by focusing on one thing. You might want to light a candle and look at that, or just focus on your breathing, anything at all. There are some great meditation apps out there. Most people quote Headspace, and I would say they're great aids. But my slight concern with the amount of meditation apps that are flooding the market now, and heck, I use some of them, they're not bad. But if meditation is about us switching off, and we get to the point where we can only meditate when we pick up one of these, I think we're missing the point. So for me, I would say practice meditating just by focusing on your breathing or looking at a candle, or even get a drum or a rattle and just do that and just be in the beat of it. Then start using some of the guided meditations and apps and meditations you can download from YouTube and Vimeo and all over the place. That's great. But don't get to the point where you condition yourself to believe that you can only meditate if you're plugging back into your phone. Try disconnecting to do it, and then you get a much bigger connection, ironically.
Love that. I was going to say, are there any apps you recommend? But I think the fact that you're almost recommending to not use an app is great as well. So,
or use an app later on once you've got used to the concept of meditating and just starting to turn your monkey chatter off a little bit. Then try using some of the apps and guided meditations. But to start with, just practice doing it on your own. Just practice just being.
Couldn't agree more. So I'm just seeing if there's any questions so far. I know there's one in the chat. I just want to see if there's any on Facebook. Doesn't look like it. No. So Simon's asked, what is NLP and how can it help? So NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming. We actually own. Do you teach NLP as well, Taz?
I don't know.
You don't? Okay. So we've actually got an NLP training school. So we certify people at practitioner and master practitioner level, which we'll be happy to give you some information on, Simon. But I like to summarize it as the art and science of personal excellence. You know, that for me is really the essence of it. And it in itself, it's the it's a case of modeling successful behaviors. That's really what NLP is: modeling successful behaviors, both internally and externally, to be able to replicate them in ways required on demand, effectively. And there's a whole host of techniques and tools that can be used to create that. And I mean, I'm sort of NLP schooled, if you like. I've been using NLP for 10 plus years. Absolutely love it. And it really is fantastic. So the crux of it is it takes you from where you are in a particular state to a desired state, emotionally, mentally, typically, and sometimes physically, to get you to where you want to be. But again, happy to send a little bit more info over to you on that, should you want to explore a little bit more about it. No problem at all. So, Taz, one of the topics that we originally said that we're going to speak about, I don't think we've ever gone 30 plus minutes before we got stuck into the I love it. It's
very
great.
Special, Will. Very special.
Still online, so I'm guessing they're loving it too. So turning negatives into positives. So a lot of us, we have negative stuff happen to us, or happen for us, let's say, but a lot of people might deem it to be happening to them. And whether that be relationships, whether that be in careers, whether that be financially, socially, you name it. It's all well and good. Well, turn your negatives into a positive. I think there's a Pitbull lyric there somewhere. I turn my life from a negative to a positive. But how?
It's a mindset. I reckon it's a mindset. So I'll give you a couple of examples. And the first one's really flippant. So I mentioned hippie shit earlier. And some of you who follow me will see me using the hashtag hippie shit if I'm talking about some of my spiritual, energetic stuff. And the reason that came about is the first time I started talking about the power of using spirituality in business, in a business setting, some, let's be kind and call him a starchy, crusty old fart, said, well, that's a load of hippie shit, isn't it? And I said, yes, it is. Thank you very much. I'm going to take that and use it as my hashtag. So that became mine. I flipped that negative. I now have a kind of tongue-in-cheek hashtag that people associate with me, and it absolutely took the power away from that. So that's one thing. Another one I use regularly, I was talking about it in one of the talks I was delivering today, is how many of you have been on the motorway and you're pootling along, and then a flash car or your dream car overtakes you in the fast lane. And for the vast majority of people in our society now will respond by going, wanker. You know, why do we do that? So instead of having that kind of attitude, the way to flip it for me would be, oh, well, okay. So instead of me throwing shade over there, maybe that's a sign that I could achieve that. I wonder how that person got that car. If I really want that, do I really want that? What do I need to do to achieve that? Maybe that's somebody telling me that it's possible. That would be a flip. If we look at that video I put out there, you know, I remember talking to a dear friend about some of the abusive scenarios I've been through many years ago now. And she was getting angrier and angrier. And she was saying, Taz, why aren't you angry? Why don't you want to just go and put a contract out on this guy? Why don't you want to rip his head off? Why aren't you pissed off about the amount of your life that was wrecked? Because it wasn't. I don't believe in regret. I genuinely do not have any regrets. Everything that we go through, if I went back and changed the tiniest thing, if I changed a hair's breadth, that might put me in a different place today. So I don't want to do that. If I hadn't been through all that stuff, I wouldn't be able to empathize with some of my clients and the people I work with who've been through that now, at least not on the same level. You know, I now work with local authorities running empowerment programs for people who are in their system, who've been through abuse, and some of those people who perpetually bounce from abusive relationship to abusive relationship. I'm about to start working with a national charity on the same basis. And if I hadn't been through it, I couldn't deal with that in the same way. You know, sometimes I could get bitter about, you know, the riches that I lost when we had to, you know, sell the family home and stuff. I could get upset about that, but why would I do that? Because I'm just depleting my own energy more. It was my choice to believe that I'd get this windfall. It was my choice not to save when I was in corporate land and I had the big paycheck. It was my place. It was my choice to, you know, live the life of Riley and have big, beautiful holidays and go up into the Canadian Rockies and climb mountains and stuff. That was my choice. So I could get hung up about it. I could say, well, what if that means everything I make of myself now, I've done that. That's all on me. And that's where, again, I can have confidence and I can be proud of what I've achieved, because I know that nobody's given me a leg up. Everything I build, I've built from the ground up, and that gives me something really beautiful, and that I can absolutely have the purest kind of pride about. So it comes back to this thing we were discussing earlier, I think, Will, really, this whole concept of life not happening to us, but for us. And there's that old cliche, isn't there, that if you're pointing the finger outside, you've got three fingers pointing back at yourself. Me, myself, and I. You know, we all know that one, and it's terribly cliched, but it's true. One of the biggest lessons I learned when I was working with the shamans and medicine people is this concept of responsibility, that we all have the ability to respond appropriately to any given situation. Responsibility. But we cannot change anything in our lives until we take ownership of them. Was it my fault that I got abused? Well, it depends how hippie shit you want to go. I could think, well, maybe my spirit sat there before being born and spoke with lots of other spirits and said, you know, I could do with really learning about abuse and what it's like to go through that. And somebody went, oh, I'll come and do that for you. It depends how deep you want to go. On a human level, is it my fault I got abused? No, but it was my choice to get into a relationship with that person. It was my choice to stay there. It was my choice to not speak out. And it was my choice to leave. When I did that, if I sat and blamed everybody else and blamed, you know, every down day or everything I'm not happy about in my life on the state of the environment or the government or Donald Trump's hair, you know, I can't change it. All the time we're blaming our own state on external factors. We are giving our control away. So flip those negatives by, instead of blaming others and instead of looking at why, looking at external reasons for why you don't have the house you want, the job you want, the partner you want, the car you want, anything else, and own it. If we own everything, we can change it. And that's why it's important to flip your negatives. There aren't really any negatives, or I don't see them as negatives anymore, because when something happens, I'll go, well, what can I learn from it? How can I grow?
That's the key, isn't it? Is like, obviously one of the ways to do it is to take the responsibility. I couldn't agree with you more, but it comes down to perspective. So,
God, yeah.
well, that's negative. And I now come from a place of actually there is no good or bad, because good or bad is moral, and that's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously you get some people that go to sort of an absolute extreme and go, well, what about this situation? What about that situation?
Yeah.
But when you really delve into it deep enough and look at it as not that acute specific scenario, but then look at it in the grand scheme of things, what that can grow out of is particularly powerful. So definitely getting perspective. But if someone, what's your advice to people if they are in that negative situation? They go, all right, fine, I'm going to take responsibility. I get that.
Yep.
I'm gonna I'm willing to consider a different perspective, but I just can't see that perspective. What's your advice to them then?
Well, it's going to depend on the scenario. Everyone's going to be different. But for me, the easiest way, which for a lot of people doesn't feel easy at all, is step one is to look at what you can learn from that scenario. What can you learn from it? What is it here to teach me? And that might seem so abstract. So if I look at, relying on mummy and daddy and expecting that I don't need to save anything, which I did that then in my early adulthood for a long time. What did I learn from that? Well, I learned the power of responsibility, and I learned that actually I have the power and potential to create the future I want without needing a leg up from anyone else. I learned that. What could I learn about, going through abuse? Actually, I learned how resilient I can be. I learned the power of resilience. And I also learned to see things from another perspective. So a couple of days ago, yesterday, in fact, it was, I wrote a Medium article, and it was talking about looking at abuse from both sides of the coin. And I was saying that as somebody who's been through abuse, I think it's really massively important that we stop demonizing anyone that we see as an abuser, because there's that cycle, isn't it? We all know that idea that the abused become the abusers, but all the time that we just demonize anyone we see as an abuser, we're not going to break the cycle. We need to instead drill down and look at, well, why are these people behaving in that way? What's needed to stop them perpetrating that? What's needed to break the cycle? And with people who keep perpetually going through an abuse, a cycle of finding abusive relationships, what's needed for them to stop them seeking out that kind of relationship as well? And it was a tough one to write, because I had some real trepidation that some people might see it as victim blaming, or some people might say, well, are you trying to say that somebody should stay in an abusive relationship and try and help their partner deal? No, God, no. No, if you're in an abusive relationship, you get out as quickly as you can and as far away as you possibly can, and leave that to somebody else. But for the rest of us, those who haven't been through that, or who are in a situation where they have healed and recovered and come back to wholeness enough from that, we need to stop demonizing. So the point with that is, I already started to get some comments on that thread from people who've been through abuse and are still really in the anger of it. And all the time we're holding on to the anger of it, there's that whole analogy, isn't it, of drinking poison and expecting it to kill somebody else. But until we start to see things from another perspective, again, we can't change things. So again, to come back to your original question, the easiest place to start when you're like, okay, I'm going to take responsibility, is what can I learn from this scenario? And if you can't see that in the moment, then go back to some of the things you faced in your past and look at them with fresh eyes and go, what did I learn from that? That thing when I was first trying to ride my bike without the stabilizers and I grazed my knees, I don't know. What did I learn from that? Well, you learn to get back on and you keep trying. When babies are first starting to walk, they don't give up the first time they fall off the edge of the sofa. They don't give up the first time they stand up from a crawl and face plant. They keep going. Imagine if when we were babies, we all gave up in the same way that we give up when we're adults. They go, oh, what did I learn from that? Okay, I learned not to try and stand up that close to the edge of the sofa. We learn.
Very true. I love the saying that everything in life is a lesson or a blessing.
Absolutely, and very often both, if we can look at it in that way.
For sure. So that's great. So thank you very much, and hopefully that's been useful for you guys that have been tuning in. Again, remember, if you have got any questions, feel free to post them on the official thread. So self-confidence. Now, clearly you are a confident woman. I mean, there's not that many people that walk around in pink jackets, pink hair, pink glasses. I've got to ask.
Darling, this is natural.
I've got to ask the question because there will be some people that are thinking, why? Because I can't imagine it's just for branding. I mean, I know you're committed to your work, but pink hair.
My pink hair, believe it or not, wasn't for branding at all. When I first broke out of corporate, when I was in corporate, I used to push it as far as I could. I'm naturally blonde, which explains quite a lot. And when I was in corporate, I used to have kind of red flashes put into my hair. It was as far as I dared push it right at the top of that corporate tree. And then when I first got out of corporate, I was working with my wife on her business, Turquoise Tiger, which was social media, copy, storytelling, PR, content coaching, and she still does that. And while I was there, I had the fringe dyed turquoise, which I think was a yay, I've escaped, I can do something crazy. It was that. And then when I started to move more and more into doing my own business full time, which was always the plan, but happened again about 5 years earlier than we thought it would. I was sitting with my hairdresser one day, and it was before I'd even developed the brand. And I said, I'm bored. I fancy a change. And she went, what do you want, Taz? I went, I don't know. What do you think? And she went, I'm not deciding, because last time when I cut these bits off, you cried until it grew back, and it's true. I did. I'm that shallow. I felt like a pinhead. And then out of the blue, my hairdresser said, do you know what I fancy doing? What, Sue? What do you fancy doing? She said, I think we should do it baby pink all over. And I just went, go on then. And that's it. People think there's some massive big brand story behind it, or something about reclaiming my right to wear a feminine colour but not be all flouncy and frilly. It's none of those. Just because my hairdresser said, let's do it pink.
Fair enough. Cool. So self-confidence then. So
Yeah.
if someone right now is maybe not feeling as confident as they could be.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna come back to that. I'll ask that in a second. Okay. What is confidence as far as you're concerned?
For me, confidence goes back to that state of knowing who you are and standing in your own power. I'm not a naturally confident person. If anyone knew me as a young girl, I was the one who was terrified of going to school trips. I went to hardly any school trips because I used to get so upset I'd cry and miss my mum. Even today, I get terrible social anxiety. Even today, I'll be the one if I end up feeling that I have to go to a party or a barbecue, I'll be the one hiding in the kitchen and saying, is it over yet? Can we go now? We've shown our faces. So confidence for me was something that I had to learn. No, I didn't have to. I chose to learn. And I chose to learn confidence because of the mission I have, which is bigger than me, which again comes back to this idea of using my own challenges to help and inspire and empower other people. And I can't help people if they don't know I exist. Someone once said to me, you can't be a secret and a success at the same time. And that feels so powerful for me. So what got me over my lack of confidence was going, well, okay, if you want to help all these people and you want to be able to help and inspire and motivate more people, you need to be seen. So that powered me. The thing about confidence is so many people think there's some magic trick or, somebody will pop up and offer some special confidence blueprint if you just swipe your credit card here. And confidence is actually one of the things that comes through doing. You get confident by doing something that scares you. It's stretching that it's a bit of a cliche, but again, stretching that comfort zone again. And the great thing about stretching your comfort zone is even if you do it a tiny bit at a time, it doesn't spring back. It will grow with you, and then it gets easier and bigger. So confidence isn't something that you just install. Confidence is something that you learn. I used to be terrified of roller coasters, and I pushed myself to do a few, and I've now learned to love them. It's like that. Physiologically, the difference between fear and excitement, well, there isn't really a difference. Whether you're afraid or whether you're excited, you might start to sweat a little bit, your mouth might go dry, your pulse rate quickens, you might start, your breathing might become more rapid. But it's the same. The difference is the way that we're approaching it. So the way to get confident for me is to find something that just makes you feel a little bit out of your comfort zone and go and do it. There's no magic formula. There's no magic pill. It's just about doing it. But what helps me is having a really powerful driver to push me to bigger and bolder places. And now, getting on stage, for instance, there are some blogs. If you go and search me on Medium or on my website, and you'll find the story of when I first had my first big speaking gig with several hundreds of people when I was still in corporate, and I was reading from somebody else's script and in full evening wear back in the day when I still had long blonde hair and there was a lot less Taz than there is now. And I made every rookie mistake in the book. I sped up and then I slowed down and I left far too many pauses. And it was recorded and I forced myself to watch it over and over and over again so that I could learn. And that was uncomfortable, but I grew in confidence by looking at, again, the mistakes that I was making and using them as valuable teachings and growing from them. So if you're really not feeling confident, just find something that feels that little bit out of reach and try that. And then try something that pushes you just a little bit more and try that. And then another thing and another thing and another thing. And you'll find each time your confidence will grow. And even if you look back, if it's roller coasters, for instance, even if you look back and go, oh my God, I hated that. And I kept my eyes closed all the way around it. You can still look back and say, yeah, but I did it. And that alone will make you feel a little bit more confident. So whatever it is you're a bit afraid of, push yourself to do it a little bit more. Your confidence will grow. Simple.
Love that. So this one that we're going to talk about now is, I think, something that there's kind of an epidemic around the world right now. And that is that people are comparing themselves to other people. And we've got social media to thank for that. And living these Instagram lives as in not like doing the live video, Instagram lives of creating this. And we were all guilty of it, right? We've all done it. We're taking 5 photos to get the one. We've all done it, right?
I Photoshop my chins out all the time, yeah. No, really.
So the key here is, how do we be our real self? Because so much stuff has been projected or injected into us for years, and we've got these idealisms that have, social idealisms is really what they are, that have been suggested to us, or that we think because of an old belief system from way back when, or whatever it is. So how do we be our real self? And actually, again, I'm going to sort of bring that back to a question to kick off with, is what is being your real self as far as you're concerned, and how do you know about whether you're being your real self or not?
Again, so much of this comes back to stepping into your own power, but it takes an awful lot of what in the old days they would describe as navel gazing to get there. So it's one of the reasons I credit my breakdown with being my breakthrough, because even now I can look back and wonder if I would be as authentic, that's one of those overused words, today, if I hadn't had that breakdown, because that broke me open, that shattered me to such an extent that I was able to kind of look at all the pieces on the floor and go, well, that bit doesn't actually feel like me. I think that bit belongs to my mum. That was my granddad's. That was something I saw in Knight Rider, all of that stuff. And I was able to rebuild in a shape that felt more like me. So, for instance, when I was in journalism, I was known for being very quick-witted and having a very sharp tongue, and the stereotypical cynical, bitchy journalist. And that was the role that I fulfilled. And if we went out for dinner with pals, they would fully expect me to sit there and tear people to shreds. And they'd all laugh and joke and egg me on. And I look back at that now and feel a little bit sick, to be honest. And, we don't very often have reunions and get-togethers with people we know from that life. The first time we did, it was really awkward because they were expecting kind of old bitchy Taz take up and say, oh, do you remember the time blah did that? And oh, what were they wearing? And the way they treat. And I was just quiet because all of a sudden the stuff that we used to talk about just didn't matter anymore. It just, the small talk was so small. And that's not to belittle anybody else living that life, but I'd moved so far away from it that it just wasn't the truth of me. Now, I don't want to put anything out there that I wouldn't want to attract back. So how do you get to the truth of who you are? Well, when you start to meditate, you will start to become more aware and more attuned to your feelings and to your emotions. You'll become more attuned to that little voice that resonates. I think one of the issues we have, I think it actually existed before we had Facebook and Instagram. I think for us, it did go way back to TV. We built ourselves not just on what people were saying on social, but on what we saw on TV. And for a lot of us, particularly people in my age range who are kind of in their 40s now, who grew up in Thatcher's Britain, where it was all about kind of materialism and commercialism, we've possibly got just as big a mountain to climb, but maybe in a slightly different way, as those who've only ever grown up with social media. But I think if we don't stop, the problem for me is caused by this massive head-heart disconnect that we have in the West. We are conditioned to operate from this, and we neglect our heart and our soul, or our heart and our gut. And, science is catching up now. Science now knows that we have neurological processes in the heart and in the gut. Look at embraining. But we've been conditioned to just use this. We are a nation of heads dragging around bodies. And so we wonder why we burn out so quickly when the only bit of our brain capacity we're using is the little bit we keep in here. We're out of touch with this. We're out of touch with this. We're just operating from a tiny portion of ourselves. And I think that stops us from recognizing the truth of who we are as well. Because again, we base so much of our identity on the way we appear to the outside world, on the clothes we wear, on the car that we drive, on how big our TV is and whether it's 4K, all of this stuff. But it's never really about the Ferrari, is it? It's about the way we think we're going to feel when we're in the Ferrari. It's about the confidence that we think we'll have. It's about the kind of coming of age, even if you're in your 40s or 50s, that we think we're going to experience by owning a Ferrari. So that's such a, how do you get there? You get there by stopping. You get there by pulling away from all of the drama that we're constantly surrounded by and all the pressure to show off, the pressure to say, I am successful because my house is this big and this is what I drive and these are all the zeros on my bank account. And really, that has nothing to do with the richness of life and the richness of who we are. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be rich. There's nothing wrong with wanting more money. One of the most powerful ways that we can enable and help other people is by having more money and being more abundant. But that isn't what should be defining us. Or I go saying should be banned. We need to be defined, for me, on a much more holistic level. Sometimes the simplest things, the things that make us feel whole, the things that really fill us up, don't cost anything at all. But we don't get in touch with the truth of who we are until we slow down and until we start to switch our perspective. And that comes right back, if you want to go there, but government health warning, guys, this stuff really can change your life. If you've lived your life wanting to be, materially based and ego driven, and you start to turn that down, go read The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. It can change everything. So just be sure you want to do it. I've got pals of mine I know who've sold everything, given everything away, and gone to live from a 5-bed detached into a caravan. So be aware of how far you want to push this. But it can be far healthier for me if we have a more grounded approach to living truthfully and honestly and authentically and being comfortable with who we are inside our own skin. But we only get to that point when we start to breathe fully all the way down to our abdomens, and we start to meditate and we start to reconnect. And we'll know. We'll know when things don't resonate with us, and we'll know when things do resonate with us. And sometimes when we start to practice, we might be surprised by the different effects that things have or don't have.
Fantastic. So very much awareness, really, isn't it? Having that awareness and asking you, like you say, from using the tools like meditation, asking yourself better quality questions, listening to that inner voice, the head, heart, gut process, as you mentioned, and sort of really knowing what's right. It's interesting. So I'm a massive fan of Dr. John Demartini. He's a mentor of mine, and I've had the privilege of spending a bit of time with him. And last May, I asked him a question, and I said, John, when we're making decisions, should we listen to our head, heart, and gut? Head, heart, or gut? And he said to me, well, if you're living aligned to your highest values, all three will be saying the same anyway. So,
the one that does the rounds on social every now and then I quite like, which is follow your heart but take your head with you.
Yeah. It's true, right? And I think there's a lot to be said for that. So that's fantastic. Well, look, before we round up, and we're pretty much bang on an hour, this has been fantastic, and I'm truly grateful for you coming on and spending some time with the Make It Happen community this evening. Thank you very much, and we've got to get you speaking at some of the events. I'd actually love to have you. I know we've been talking about it for a while, but we'll get that happening for sure. But if anyone has got a question quickly they want to ask, quickly post it in the Make It Happen community, and we can get that sorted. What I will do this evening is I'll find that video, or if you happen to have the video link, Taz, obviously your sort of infamous video, then please send it over to me and I'll post it in the group. But if anyone has got a question, then please, we'll give you 30 seconds or so to write a question before we look at rounding up. And then please comment what's been your biggest takeaway listening in this evening. What is it that you've grabbed that Taz has said, or maybe I might have mentioned that you've thought, you know what, that's absolute gold. Yeah, that's a great reminder, or that's new information, that's new knowledge. What is it that's been really useful for you? Because it would be great to get that feedback. Mark says this has been awesome. So hi Mark, thanks for joining in. I'm glad you found it useful, and obviously everybody else has been joining. But if you have got a question, then please type it away. Tanya's sent a request to join the community, so Tanya will get that approved, no problemo. If you're not in the community already and you've got a question, you can ask it in the chat box quickly now. But look, it doesn't look like we appear to be getting any, which just means
we've
that
overloaded them with information.
Everything. So Linda says she loved all the confidence stuff and owning power. Tanya said always appreciates reminders to flip the negatives and look at alternative learning opportunities. So yeah, very, very true indeed. Well, look, guys, let's look at rounding it up there. I'll get all these things approved in a moment or so. Thank you so much for joining us. Taz, once again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Along this evening. And guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Have a great evening, whatever it is you're up to. Until next time, make it happen.
Take care.